Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. Welcome back. New week. So, a new guest. As you can see, I have Chris joining me this week, which has been a long time coming. We've been interacting on LinkedIn for quite some time now. So, it's nice to finally get to hear Chris's story and have him share some stuff about what he does currently and how he helps people who are trying to transition into new roles. So, Chris, thanks again for jumping on here with me.
Yeah, happy to be here, Matthew.
Yeah, definitely. So, if you've watched, if you've listened, we usually start off the show just kind of diving into what we have going on for the week, what's motivating us, things like that. So, this is like the first and last weekend in a while that I have nothing going on, which is great. So I'm really looking forward to like I say doing nothing, but that's going to be like the housework day and catching up on
Mhm.
like everything that we have to do because then the week after is Easter, and then I have WrestleMania, and then we're going to Disney World. So wish me luck there, middle of April, in Disney. I'm looking forward to it, but been hearing mixed things about what the crowds are going to look like. So we'll see. But at the same time, my 4-year-old's not really into rides at this point, so I think we'll be okay. Just kind of walking around and letting her dictate. I can't see it being too crowded getting on the carousel 100 times, which is what I'm getting ready for, honestly. So we'll see how
Yeah.
that goes. So nothing on the weekend horizon is like one of my motivators is just to finally like have a weekend to decompress, catch up on some stuff that's been lingering on around the house and do some stuff there. But work-wise, I've been to a couple college career expos these past few weeks. I did one at York College, one at Northern Kentucky, and then in next week I will be going to Kennesaw State down in Atlanta. So a new college career fair to kind of prepare for, and we're deep in the heart of internship season since our internship program starts in May. So getting ready to have those discussions, talk to some prospective students, prospective interns on what we have, opportunities that are available, and if not immediately, long-term future planning, what we can do to kind of assist them with entry-level roles as we move forward. So it's kind of the goal on the horizon is just preparation for that. It's very different for me, I've noticed, to talk for 4 hours straight. I'm used to having a little bit of a break in between. So go, go, go. It's been a while since I've done that. So I'm building up that mentality again and getting in there. And a win from the week before, it was just kind of a cool thing to be able to go back to York College where I graduated, got my degree from, and be able to contribute, to prospective job seekers, fellow Spartans, if you will, and what they can do with their degree. Because I was a professional writing major, had no clue. Where that was going to take me eventually led me to education, which was kind of took a roundabout way to get back to where I probably knew I was going to be initially. So it's nice to have those conversations early on. So that's my week. Chris, what do you have going on in your world this week?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Disney. Believe it or not, I have a 4-year-old granddaughter, and last week my wife was down on the other side of the country in Anaheim going to Disneyland. So they did a girls' trip with our daughter and granddaughter. So yeah, she's 4. She had a blast. I think you all are going to have a great time. She said it was busy, lots of people, but all totally manageable. So
Right. To be expected.
yeah, for sure. So that's exciting. So yeah, I'm glad that she is back home and back with me. I think at work, there's been a lot of changes at Cisco lately. So I think what I've been motivated by the last couple weeks, especially this last week, is really thinking about our vision going forward, what we're doing with our department, and really leaning into like content and content creation. I know we're going to talk about that today. That's kind of the focus of my role, but we're really kind of redefining ourselves as a team and as a content creation team. And so thinking about what that means and what that might look like on the future has been really energizing the last week or two, just to see those kind of pieces start to fall into place.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So you and I have been connected for some time, as I alluded to at the beginning of the episode. You had reached out to me to kind of share my story of, how my path went from education into recruitment and all of those things. And you do a lot. You're very active on LinkedIn to kind of assist people with, career transitions and looking into new opportunities. And you were a career coach early on in your own career, and you're obviously still very active in that type of support and assistance to job seekers. So what were some of the things that you enjoyed most about your time as a career coach that you knew, as you explored other opportunities, you still wanted to keep that part of you and be able to contribute and give back to people who were looking for something new?
Yeah, absolutely. That really kind of organically emerged. we hired a teacher to be an instructional designer on our team about a year and a half ago, and she's been great. And she really kind of opened up my eyes to like all these teachers who are going out and leaving the classroom for whatever their motivations are, but doing great things in instructional design and learning, but in recruiting and sales and ops and data. And so it really got me interested in that. And so it kind of harkened back to my career coach days. So that was one of my first jobs right out of college. And I was working with business school students who are only a couple years behind me. But I really just loved working with people. And I think that's what I still love is getting to know people and really finding out like what they enjoy, right? Like what they're good at, and
Mhm.
then what they can actually get paid to do, right?
Yeah.
And so it's kind of taking those three aspects of what really lights people up, what they want to do at work, and then what they're really good at, and like kind of digging into their skills and trying to like map those things together, and then saying like, how do we take this and get this into a career that's really going to reward you financially as well and like actually pay the bills, right? And so
Yeah.
for a lot of people, it's hard to get all three of those things lined up. And sometimes you have one or two, but not the third. And so I think that's when a lot of us feel really satisfied and engaged at work is when we're doing stuff that we love. We know we're making a difference and like really using our skills and doing a great job, but then we're also getting rewarded for that. And so I love coaching people and just kind of thinking through that process of like, what's a priority for me right now? Like, what do I want to focus on? Where can I grow? And then, where can I take that next step? Maybe someone's doing a great job and they're enjoying their work, but they like to just make some more money. And so how do they do that? And so I love working with people and kind of mapping that progress and that next step out.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So you've been working in content development and product management past several years, and I know content development is one of those popular positions that transitioning educators try to target as, what can we do next? What do we like to do? Planning lessons and creating, lessons for students is kind of goes into their creative side of things, and content development is aligned with that. So when looking into that, when transitioning educators, teachers are looking to pursue that opportunity, can you give like a brief glimpse of what they can expect as some of the projects that they would get to work on in that type of space?
Yeah, for sure. And I've always been a content person. I studied English and writing in school, kind of similar to your background. And I actually did copywriting for a few years and marketing before I moved into learning. But what I really loved about content development and learning is that I wasn't trying to sell, things. I was really trying to educate, help people learn. So I loved that aspect of it. And as a content developer, I was really kind of focused on working with instructional designers to build storyboards, right? So taking kind of these high level designs they had and fleshing that out and bringing those to life with stories and scenarios and like drafting the content out. Lots of editing, right? So lots of copy editing, and I was always focused on quality and making sure everything was error free and really high quality. And then the other thing too is really facilitating reviews, right? So we have lots of different stakeholders. So going out to those reviewers, getting their feedback and then being the decision maker on how am I going to implement this feedback? A lot of times you'll ask three people, the same question, you'll get three different answers. So how do you take those three answers and kind of synthesize them into one change, right, that you want to apply to your content? So kind of being part of that iterative process and continually making it better. So yeah, and then from there I moved on to being a content manager. So there I was zooming out a little bit from the project level and really focusing on like platforms and processes, right? So like what platforms do teams use to make content? What's the process that they use so that when we have multiple teams, right, they're all using kind of a similar process so that we keep high quality, consistent, content that feels like it's written from a single point of view and not written from five different teams. So kind of getting teams to work together. And then now in my role as a product manager, overseeing our content and learning solutions, I'm really thinking about what are our priorities as a group? Like where are we going to work on next? Where are we going to invest next? So it's kind of going back to working with those stakeholders, right? And trying to understand what are your priorities? How can we help you? What content can we build to support, what's important to the business right now? And then lining that up for the team so they have a really clear roadmap for here's what we're going to work on, next week, next quarter, next year, so they kind of can see what's coming in the future.
For sure, yeah. So to jump back to when you started out in content development, because one of the things I try to do, and anyone that joins the show is, discuss what you really enjoy most about your position. And for people who are transitioning from education into something new, and I know one of the main things that they're looking for is, teaching is a very fulfilling, rewarding position. It's there's stress there
Yeah.
and there's frustrating days, but big picture, that's a position that gives you a lot of self-satisfaction when you have those days where like things click and you're like, this was the best day. I'm glad I'm an educator. So, what are some of
Mm.
those days when you were in content development that just the same thing kind of clicked for you and was like, I really enjoyed doing this in my job?
Yeah, I've always been like a curious person. I've always liked to find new things and enjoyed learning new things. And what I loved about content development is that I got to go out and talk to all these really interesting people from, like healthcare and like, medicine and pharmaceuticals to like manufacturing and even tech. Like what I loved was like sitting down with these people who were super smart and trying to take all this amazing like information they had in their brain and like it piqued my curiosity because I got to learn and ask questions and like interview them. But then it kind of clicked for me where I could say, okay, how do I take all of this information and make it simple, really, and like distill it down, right? To like,
Yeah.
what are the most important things here that we want to communicate and teach to others, right? Who need to know this information. And so I really loved that process of kind of like being curious, being engaged with people and taking like, these are the most critical kind of steps or pieces of these processes and like getting that and breaking it down in a way that is simple and logical for someone else to learn.
Mhm.
As you probably know, like that's a lot of work, right? To simplify something and to really distill it down, like that takes a special amount of skill. So I really love those days when it felt like it was clicking, right? And we were building those relationships, but I was also kind of understanding like, okay, this is how we're going to talk about this, or this is the kind of video we're going to build out, or we're going to build out like an interactive to show how all these steps line up. And that's when things really clicked for me because I could feel really good about, oh, we're going to put out this great product. And it's going to take this person's like 10, 20 years of experience and really distill it down into something in maybe a half an hour or an hour that people can really learn and like do better at their jobs or, take out and apply in the world. And that was really always exciting for me when that came together.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So you've kind of alluded to this next question already, and just to kind of expand on it a little bit further. So when people from any walk of life are looking to move into a new career and take on a new challenge, the first thing they start to look for is their transferable skills. What am I doing in my current role that is going to help me be successful, make the transition, I wouldn't say easy, but a little less of an overwhelming task. So for people who are looking at content development, content creation, what would you say are some of the primary skills that they should be looking to themselves? Do I have this? Am I ready for this? Because I need this to be successful.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the key one really with content is like writing and development. I mean, so much of content is based on the written word, right? And so people who have that background in English or are coming from like the arts and humanities, like and are creative, right? That's a big one is just understanding content and then really understanding editing as well, like understanding style guides and all the different approaches. So I think that's a big skill. I would say another one that's kind of adjacent to that is communication, right? So not just being able to write well, but actually being able, like I was saying, to sit down and talk to people, do interviews, right? So we also have lots of great people with journalism backgrounds in content development because they're good with like sitting down with people, interviewing people, and then distilling that down into a story, right? Which is like what we all like to resonate and relate to. So those are two really big skills with writing and then interviewing and people engagement. I would say another big one really is project management because as a content developer, I was like the owner of the content and the storyboard. So it was my job to make sure that all these little pieces and parts that may be contributed by other team members are all coming together. We have all the feedback, and on a project, we might have two or three or four internal people, and we might be working with two or three or four external people. So it was really my job to pull all those details together and make sure it was all getting done and getting done on time and all getting pulled into our storyboard and whatever output we were building. So a lot of project management skills as well, just keeping track of the details, being detail oriented, being aware of your timelines and where things are going and being able to deliver on time. So I know teachers and educators are really good at juggling things and like staying focused and being creative, thinking on their feet, but also tracking like a lot of different things across different subjects or different areas. And so I think that kind of like project management mindset is a big skill that people can lean into.
Yeah, definitely. Now, a question I've gotten a lot, and I don't know a ton about the content creation, so I haven't really been able to give guidance when I do get the question is on, putting together a portfolio. And I know that some people are encouraged to start making their own portfolios just through like writing on blogs and contributing to articles and things like that. So with that in mind, is there any specific like software or any systems design software? And you don't have to sell anything specifically, but things that they can be looking into that they should learn or get familiar with, just to kind of have that on their resume as something that they've at least experienced, even if it's minimally?
Yeah, with content creation, it really depends on where you're going with it because a lot of the basic writing is done in really simple software. And I think those are things you can highlight on your portfolio, right, as your written skill. But, I come from a learning and development background. We do a lot of like online learning and e-learning. And so that's where we start to get into software. And I always kind of caution people, software comes and goes. There's always trends. Like there's things, we used to build courses in Flash 15 years ago, and it's not
Yes.
even around anymore, right? So things come and go. But Articulate Storyline is a big software suite that a lot of learning and development teams use. So if you're interested in L&D and you're interested in content for learning, Storyline is a great software to understand of just how to build interactive content, like how to take the content and build it out into, organizers or videos or interactive quizzes, things that are going to get people engaged, much like you do kind of in a classroom setting. So that's a big piece. And then the other thing I always stress with portfolios is that if you do the work or the outputs, if you create some like small courses, it's always great to see the process of how you got there. Because I see very commonly in portfolios the output, like the very final product, right? But as a hiring manager, what I'm always interested in when I interviewed people in the past was like, what are the steps you took to get to that final product? Like, did you have a storyboard? Did you interview people? Like, did you map this out? Did you have a design document? Like, what were those steps that you used? Because I really want to see like the process, right? And how people thought about it and how they got from one step to the next. And for me, that was just as important as seeing the final output. So I kind of like that behind the scenes look into kind of like the process and the thinking that went into that piece of content. So that's always helpful too.
Yeah, definitely. So I want to go back to your time as a career coach, and even now as you're offering the support to people looking to start something new. The interview preparation is usually the most overwhelming aspect of the job search, because you get there, you finally get the call, you have the interview, and you start second guessing yourself. There's the
Yeah.
imposter syndrome that people deal with, things like that. So going back to when you worked as a career coach and through now as you're continuing to provide this support, what would you say are some of the main things that you try to tell candidates, that you're assisting, how to best prepare for the interview, both questions that they might be asked from the perspective of a hiring manager, and then some questions that you like to be asked from the other side of the table?
Yeah, it's interesting having been both, a candidate in the last few years and getting this job at Cisco, but also being on a hiring manager in the past and being on panels. Now I've seen both sides, and it's the big thing really is coming up with your stories, right? And so it's great to think about individual questions, but my approach is always to come up with like these like 3 to 5 like really key stories that speak to my skills,
Yeah.
right? And if I get those stories down and practice them really well, keep them tight, right? Because the other big mistake I see, especially on the interviewer side, is that people get in and they get a little nervous and they start rambling, right? And sometimes they go 3, 4, 5 minutes and they just keep talking, right? And so you really need to understand like what a 2 minute answer feels like so that you kind of know when you get there. But practice those stories, and then I take those 3 or 5 stories and I can use them to answer a lot of different questions, right? Like I can tell a story, and if the question's about project management, something I like to ask about a lot, I can emphasize the things I did in that project or that story on project management. But maybe I could use that same story to talk about, a difficult project or a time when I had a difficult client I worked with. And I would tell the same story, but I would just emphasize those different parts to fit that question. And so I think people they think like, oh, I need to be prepared with just 15 or 20 or 30 different kinds of questions and answer them all uniquely. And so I like this system where you can take these core stories you have and really adapt them to the question, right? So that you're not having to think on the fly. We all get nervous, right? It can be very, uh, overwhelming to be in an interview when there's a lot on the line. But if you know these stories and you practice them and you can keep them tight around 2 minutes each, you can really just emphasize those different aspects of the story and get that to the question. So that's kind of the approach I work with people, and I think it works well because it's manageable,
Yeah.
right? But yeah, project management, lots of questions about that. by the time people get into interviews, usually they've demonstrated they have the skills. And I like to ask a lot of questions just about values and how they show up as a teammate, right? So, tell me about a time when a teammate changed your mind. That's one of my favorite questions because I want to see how people think and like that they're adaptable, right? They're willing to kind of change their mind, they're willing to try something new. So I
Mhm.
love to like get into those kind of soft skills as well, just because like I said, by the time people get to us, to a panel, to a hiring manager, most of the people have the skill to do the job. It's just who's the right person and who's going to be a good teammate, right, to work with us.
Yeah, fantastic insight there. And speaking of which, a lot of the insight that you do offer to job seekers, if people are connected with you or follow you on LinkedIn, you would do a lot with the message of networking and building your network and getting support from them, which is often an overlooked and it can be an intimidating part of the job search process, making that introduction and reaching out to someone, with a cold message of, hey, would you be interested in connecting and telling me more
Mm.
about what you do, things like that. So how do you try to coach others to develop their network and create that environment where they're not just, getting support from other people, but also being able to be a resource to them as part of their search or their processes too?
Yeah, just kind of letting it happen organically, right? And like you said, I think what you emphasized there at the end is so important that it needs to be a two-way street. Like you can't be looking for someone to just help you, right? You need to go in and when you're starting off looking into networking or mentoring, like focus on what you can offer that person, right? If you're reaching out to someone with a cold message, make it about them and like what you can offer them, what you can maybe help them do. And when you get into that networking call, focus on the person, especially if you initiated, focus on them, learn from their story, like dig into what they've learned in their career. I think a common mistake is to make it about you, right? And you want to get into this networking session and you want to talk about yourself and your goals and your background and that's okay, right? And you can do some of that, but if you've initiated the call, like be interested in that other person and what you can learn from them and what you can do to support them. And I think that's a really great setup, right? Because then it's very natural that they're going to want to reciprocate, right? But it's a very two-way street. So I think that's a great way to network, and networks are so powerful, especially right now. I mean, you're a recruiter, like what the job market is like having that network, like having someone who can either give you insights into what a job is like or what a company is like and what they're looking for, maybe give you a referral. That can be priceless when you're in this market where people are struggling to get in to talk to recruiters, right? Or getting into that, like having that network who can help you and coach you and really just like cheer you on along the way, right? Because a lot of people go through this job searching process. It can feel very isolated, like you're out there on your own, kind of struggling to get traction. And that's where your network can really come in and support you, help you, right? You don't have to go through this alone. There's lots of us who have either gone through this or are going through this right now, and we can kind of do that together and learn from each other.
Yeah, definitely. So you've shared a ton of fantastic and very valuable information and advice already, but I still do like to wrap up every interview that I have, every call here with just that advice question. So, for someone who's coming either from your time as a career coach or even now as you provide this support to your network of people looking to move into something new, what would you say
Yeah.
is that key piece of advice that you always try to pass on to people who come with you and ask you for it?
Yeah, I'll leave you two pieces of advice. So the first one is really, get really clear about your goals and your motivations. And we kind of talked about this at the beginning, right? But focus on that piece of what you really enjoy and get clear on that so you know what good looks like and what you're looking for, whatever that might be. Because it can be easy to kind of just chase job after job after job and apply and apply. And I think that's how I see a lot of people get burned out is they're
Yeah.
just chasing a lot of different things and they're not really getting that clarity on this is what I want. These are my kind of base expectations around what kind of company or what kind of situation or whether it's remote or hybrid and the pay and the kind of work.
Mhm.
Once you get clear on that, you probably won't be able to find that perfect combination, but at least you know what you're looking for. And if you're kind of going off on the wrong track and really you only have so much time, so many resources, right? So you want to invest in those things that are going to really be rewarding to you and to your career. So that's the first piece is like get clear on that before you start, sending out all kinds of applications and resumes, like get clear on that first. The second thing I would say is leave room for surprise. And this is just like my general life advice. Like so many times in life, Matthew, I've thought this is what I want or this is what I need. And just leaving that room for surprise has been such like a gift to myself to say, oh wow, like I actually really enjoyed this thing I didn't think I would like, or I enjoyed this person or this career, or this kind of job. And I never expected that. So I always like to leave room for a surprise. You know, my example is that I never thought I wanted to be a people manager. I avoided it for years. And I finally had the opportunity and I said yes. And I loved it. I actually just loved working with people. I loved being a people manager. And it was something that I had like held off for years and I was totally surprised. And so just leave room for that. You know, you never know when you might enjoy something or really just be surprised in life.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Chris, I'm very appreciative of you taking some time to jump on here with me. I'm glad we were finally able to do this. So thank you for the openness and for all that you do to support not just your network, but anyone who comes for advice. You seem to be very open and willing to be transparent. So, a very strong ally to have in the job search process, and I thank you for that as well. For everyone watching and listening, thanks for taking some time to check out what we had going on this week. If you're not connected with Chris already, make sure you're doing that. Otherwise, have a great week.
See y'all.